lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing the Booktube Journey Tag. So this is a new tag that's doing the rounds at the moment that was created by Books and Things, and it came at such a perfect time for me. I've not actually been formally tagged in it, but I've been kind of floating around since coming back from my hiatus looking for some kind of tag to do with my journey on Booktube. And the Booktube Oldie tag is a classic that gets done after you've been around for a few years after the Booktube Newbie tag, but the questions really didn't resonate with me, whereas this is exactly the kind of thing that I was looking to be able to find to be able to talk about. So there are 15 questions that are basically about your Booktube journey as a whole. And question 1 is, how long have you been watching Booktube? And I started watching Booktube about a year before I actually then made my channel. And for me, it was a real nudge to start reading again. I had graduated university, started my own business, and felt like my entire life had been consumed by that business, and I hadn't read for pleasure in probably at that point about 2 to 3 years. And it was at the point where sort of I was contemplating selling off my business, wasn't really too sure what I was doing there, and had basically wanted to try and claim back some of my own time. And so Booktube for me, I started watching Booktube probably for a solid 6 months before I even started reading it again. I was just really enjoying consuming content about books before I then actually started to read. And then question 2 is, how long have you been making Booktube videos? So in August it will have been 5 years, but there will be a hiatus of just under 2 years within that, I believe is what I did. I did 3 years and then had a 2 year and a bit gap, or did 2 years and had a 2 year bit gap. Maybe it's longer than that. It's either 5 or 6 years. This is information I could have looked up and I just didn't, so that's helpful of me, isn't it? 5 to 6 years I think, but with a gap of about 2 years in the middle. And then question 3 is, what made you start making videos? And for me, Booktube really was going to be an external checker, an external force to make sure that I kept reading and kept prioritising my reading. Because my theory was, if I was trying to make content, what I didn't want was, I'd kind of dabbled with reading back again for pleasure as an adult, but it never stuck for longer than about a month just because things got in the way. Whereas if I felt this pressure to keep creating content for people, even if it was for only like the first like 10 people who watch when you're an absolute baby and you're not really putting much out, that pressure of just knowing that there were people out there was enough to get me to stick with it. And that was the theory behind it, and it actually worked really well, because there were multiple points, especially at the beginning when I was developing those good habits, where I'd be like, I need to get this read because I'm part of a readathon and I put out a readathon TBR, and I can't then go to do a readathon wrap up and say that I only read half a book. I need to start building this into my routine, and it worked fantastically for me actually. The next question is, are there any people who've played a significant role in your Booktube journey? I want to mention Amy Gets Lit on here. I don't know if she's creating content much anymore, but she was definitely an early advocate of my channel and became quite a close friend for a while, and was somebody who I did speak to quite regularly outside of Booktube. And there have definitely been people along the way, like people who I've done readathons with, who I've kind of spoken to outside of in the comment section, people who I've done buddy reads with that I've definitely really appreciated. So for me, they have played a significant role in that respect. Question 5 is, what kinds of books do you like to read? And it definitely now is kind of a little bit of everything. I recently did the reading taste tag because I felt like it had transitioned so much over the past couple of years, but at the moment I'm doing pretty much a 50-50 split of non-fiction to fiction, with a good number of classics in there, but I also do read a fair amount of romance, so I sort of have quite a wide spread of different things. In terms of my classic, of like my fiction reading even, it's mainly a lot of kind of fantasy, historical fiction and sci-fi. And then question 6 is, how has that changed since you started on Booktube? And for me, I think that really has been the biggest thing, is my reading journey. When I started on Booktube, I definitely wasn't reading much non-fiction. It's something which I had read historically in the past, but I hadn't come back to and had kind of forgotten about, and that has definitely increased over the years, primarily due to exposure to things like Non-Fiction November and a book olive, who I'm sure I'm going to talk about later when there's questions about influencers and things like that. Also for me, romance definitely is something that has come off the back of Booktube, and there are definitely a good number of really popular books that I wouldn't reach for if it hadn't been for Booktube. So I think Booktube for me is very good at pointing me. I'm kind of one of these stubborn people who doesn't tend to like to read books that are overhyped. I'm very much like, oh, everyone's watching it, I'll catch it in a couple of years then kind of a person. Whereas I think Booktube can help me get out of my own way and being like, okay, everyone's talking about it, I will check it out, it probably is worth it. Whereas I'm always a bit of a skeptic about hype. The next question is, what kind of videos do you most like to make? And for me, I love doing the like overly specific book recommendation stuff. I definitely think I'm making a little bit of a mini name for myself for weirdly niche topics. So things like I've got a paleontology video that I really enjoyed doing. My latest one on like books about workers' rights was really fun, and the video about books about death was really good. I definitely enjoy the fact that generally most topics, if you come to me and say I'm really interested in blah, I probably have something that I can reach for that I've either read myself or heard of. So I really enjoy that kind of niche specificity to it. Like I did a video before my hiatus which was like books with non-human narrators. It's just really fun stuff like that I enjoy, like grouping my books into different themes. And I definitely enjoy them far more than I do like reading challenge videos or anything like that. Although I do like a tag. I love a little bit of a meta conversation about reading. So these kinds of things I really enjoy, to be a bit more kind of casual and chatty. That's definitely where I'm at. And then question 8 is, how has that changed since you started on Booktube? I think at the beginning I was quite wary about being able to do any recommendations videos because I really hadn't read much to be able to recommend much. And also I definitely was doing far more challenge videos as I was like shopping around trying to find books that resonated and things to do, and was definitely playing a bit more. I engaged far more with readathons. I probably did a readathon like once a month, whereas I definitely don't do that now. I tend to do much longer readathons, or either 2 weeks or a month themselves, rather than these 1 week thematic ones. And I did a lot more book hauls at the beginning because I was just buying so much. It was something which I was going to a lot of charity shops and just buying anything that I'd heard people talk about, just to try and get volume up on my shelves to work out what I was or wasn't interested in. And I was unhauling things almost as fast as I was buying them, which I think is a rite of passage when you get back into reading and you're really, or into any kind of hobby, and you're trying to work out like, who are you now in connection with that hobby? Like I bought a ton of Stephen King that I then got rid of because it turns out I don't actually like him. But when they're so cheap, they're like 50p at a charity shop, there's no harm in doing that because you're like giving yourself room to play and expand. Question, oh, it also says, do you think your video making style has changed over time? I think I put more effort into editing at the beginning. I'm crap at editing now. You might have noticed it's jarry and like glitchy, and I'm far more confident to just like talk at the camera, and I used to try and cut out a lot of the pauses. I used to have to retake things a lot more, whereas often what you see now is just the straight run through, and I'll just clip out the little bits as I'm like looking down at my phone or reaching for a book, and everything else is pretty much a continuous, which you may have noticed on my channel. I'm definitely more confident just at you guys. That's a great way of describing that. Oh, hilarious. I didn't even look. This is, yeah, I do a lot less prep now as exhibit A. The next question is, do you script and or edit your videos, and has that changed over time? I definitely used to put a lot more, thought is the wrong word. That sounds like I'm just like throwing these things together in the corner. I used to have to sit down and plot out my thoughts a lot more. I would have written notes about what I was going to say about each book, especially when doing individual book reviews and things like that, whereas now I'm far more confident and happy to sort of formulate things as I go. And when I've recommended a book several times in different videos, you'll notice that there is a, not spiel as such, but there is a definite kind of recurrence of the things I say about that book as I kind of cement what is its elevator pitch that I'm giving to you guys. In terms of the actual editing, like I said, it's probably got a bit sloppier. I used to be more interested in doing fun things as well, vlogs and things like that. I kind of dabble with, and I found that they don't work for me because it's just way more editing. I want to be able to just chuck one file in, snip, 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 and done. So yeah, that is how I now engage with this. Question 10 is, what is the most viewed video on your channel? And I can tell you now, it's my post-apocalyptic / survivalist fiction recommendations video that I put out in February 2020. Having absolutely no idea what we were about to barrel into in March. And that video really captured an accidental zeitgeist of the time. In the same way that the board game Pandemic sold out very early on in the pandemic, I think a lot of people were reaching for these post-apocalyptic books, these survivalist books that kind of feel a bit better. There were articles written about this kind of thing. So it really was an entirely accidental, I'd planned this video for ages. It was a genre and subgenre of fiction that I used to read a lot of. I don't much anymore, but it was really something that I deeply enjoyed at the time, and yeah, it just happened to capture the right kind of moment. My second most popular one is a science and biology recommendations video, and that was one that did appallingly for about 18 months and then got picked up somewhere in some kind of algorithm and now it's sat on like 8k views or something crazy. Absolutely no idea how or why, but that's one of the fun things about YouTube, is you can never really tell what's going to get picked up and what's going to do well, and some videos that have just languished with shit views for such a long time will suddenly resurface and everyone's watching them. Annoyingly, my Booktube newbie tag occasionally does that, and I hate that video. It's one of the only ones I would actually delete, possibly. Question 11 is, what is the favourite video you've ever made? I don't really have one. I like a lot of my videos. I think I like the fact that I have a space where I can talk about these really niche things, and I think it's excellent to expose more people to these really niche reads. In terms of what was my favourite to film, I have a really old video I will link up in the cards. It's me and my dad doing a very silly reading challenge where we have the top 100 BBC books, we've split the list, we have 50-50 each, and the other person has to guess the book based on the blurb. And the lighting is awful. I'm like front lit by my laptop, the sun's going down, so as the video progresses it gets even worse, and I'm like getting progressively drunk on Prosecco. And it was so much fun to film it, sat with my dad. My parents were both really quite involved at the beginning and loved the fact that I had a YouTube channel, and I'm sure if I asked them to get involved again they totally would, but it was just like the novelty at the beginning. And yeah, it's one of my favourite videos because it's such a fond memory for me of sitting and just giggling over how silly book blurbs are and getting progressively tipsy with my dad, which is always a favourite pastime of mine. So if you want a little blast from the past, it's not a good quality video, check that one out. And then, do you have a favourite book you've read because of Booktube? I think one that I want to mention here is Waterfalls of Stars by Alexander Roseanne. Or Roseanne Alexander. It will be here and I'll mention the cards down below. This is a really lovely nature writing book that for me really cemented my love of nature writing in general. It is about two people who live on the island of Skoma. They are the wardens of Skoma, and the reason why I mention it specifically for the Booktube one was because it was mentioned during a springathon or just beforehand, and I read it for a springathon. And basically this book is an absolute bugger to get a hold of. It was a really small run print. You couldn't find it in any like big bookshops. It had to be ordered quite specifically online. It was like a ridiculous tiny Welsh publishing company, I think, and for me it's something which, like, it was such a really wonderful, positive, lovely reading experience that I never would have had if it weren't for the fact that Booktube people mentioned it. And there have definitely been books that I've had, like, have added to my want to reads because of Booktube, and then when I've gone to find them they are difficult to actually locate because they are quite obscure niche books. And I really love the fact that there is this avenue where people can talk about books that are very hard to come by, that you happen to have stumbled across, and are able to then spread that to more people, because I really do think we've like done quite well for that author's sales by mentioning Waterfall of Stars. Also, if you like nature writing and you're looking for a pick for readathon for springathon coming up, Waterfalls of Stars, it's amazing. 13, do you have a favourite Booktube experience to tell us about? I think probably just like hosting any of the readathons that I've hosted. I think that they have been really fun, positive experiences, getting to engage with people in that way. And so yeah, I just generally love those particular parts. So yes, Springathon and the History Challenge are the two that I currently do. Hopefully a third coming in September. Ooh, little sneaky peek behind the curtain. And yeah, I love the planning bit beforehand. I love being able to interact with other people in the book community. I love seeing what people's picks are and kind of conversations around them. And yeah, I think for me it's that. And I also really love the comment sections. I love chatting with people in the comments. Every single comment makes my day. I really, really appreciate all of them. People who comment regularly, people who don't. And I'm awful at commenting, so I'm terrible. I know how much I love it and then I don't do it back to people. I'm like the freaking worst. I'm such a lurker, and I'm so sorry to everybody whose work I engage with but then don't comment. But I love it when people chat to me in the comments, so thank you so much to everybody who does that. And then the next question is, what advice would you give to new people starting a Booktube channel? And I think I'd just say just go for it, but also make sure you're getting into it for the right reasons. I think if you are hoping that you'll gain a load of followers overnight and you'll be up there in the 10, 20, 40, 100k subscribers, this is the wrong community for that. And YouTube has really gone past that point. That kind of sense of like viral hits, even people with viral hits don't necessarily contain, like, keep that momentum going. And I think for me It's about finding a niche and a corner that you really are happy in, and that you feel like you have a little core group and community, and it will take a while to build it, but it's kind of getting a sense of what you're coming into it for, and being willing to put in that work and to kind of keep going even when some videos don't do very well. And you know, you could look at my however many 5-6 years on here and be like, well done kid, you've got what, 2.5k subscribers, and you pick up 100 to 300 views on most of your videos. The odd one does a little bit better, but not by much. What are you really doing here? Why are you wasting your time? But for me, this is such a positive, wonderful area to be able to share my thoughts with the world, but also have your thoughts back, and to really feel like I am communicating with people about a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is reading, which I think we all share. And it's something which, you know, I've got some really great friends out of it, and some really great, you know, like Goodreads community and like readathon communities, and just communities in general. So know why you're coming in. And then the final question is basically to tag some people. So I'm going to tag Triumphal Reads, you knew this was coming your way, Curious Reader and Tokyo Chemist. I will leave their tags down below. Please do check out all their channels. And I just want to do a little shout out, because I probably should have mentioned it in the significant others people, but for me, some of the big channels that really like massively influenced my booktube journey is a Book Olive, obviously, as our unofficial queen of non-fiction on booktube. She has been so instrumental in me getting back into non-fiction reading, and I think that's the same for so many people out there. Jean from Bookish Thoughts is also fantastic. She was such a big classics reader. It's in like ancient classics, and for me, I think really cemented the fact that actually at the beginning when I was on booktube watching, a lot of people were reading a lot of YA stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was really her who flagged up a load of other things that were really interesting to hear about and to see people talking about. And then for sheer variety of videos and variety of books read, it has to be Mara over at Books Like Woe, who really cemented for me that actually you can read from a huge variety of stuff. You can bounce from the serious non-fiction to the really trashy paranormal romance, and there are audiences out there for both of them, and people aren't going to leave you if you aren't picking a really specific niche. She was sort of the first like seriously omnivore reader, as I like to call us, that I saw doing quite well on booktube, and for me she was a real inspiration to kind of feel like I could address all the different aspects and areas of my reading, and to not feel like I could only talk about one particular area because that was the bit that it was doing better, and to feel like it was completely okay to talk about all the other stuff that I liked to read. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of do a little shout out for those guys. I'm sure if you watch my channel you've heard of all three of them, because they're such big names on booktube now, but if you haven't, if somehow I'm the one you've stumbled across first, check them out as well. So that is it from me. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about anything discussed on this, and if you have a booktube channel and you want to do this tag and you haven't been explicitly tagged, I really encourage that you do. It was really fun, and thank you so much, Books and Things, for creating this, because this filled the perfect niche that I was looking for. I wanted to be able to have this conversation, and this was fantastic for it. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.